place looks like paradise. Crystal clear water, still and blue, right in the heart of New Mexico. But beneath its crystal clear surface lies a hidden labyrinth of terror. This is one of the most deceptively dangerous dive sites in America. A massive underwater cave, sealed shut by a heavy metal grate. It wasn't always there because sometimes the only way to keep people safe is to lock the door on a nightmare. Today, we're diving into the horrifying events that forced authorities to seal this cave forever. The stories of those who ventured too deep and never returned. If you're claustrophobic or uneasy about underwater horror, consider this your warning. Viewer discretion is advised. The Blue Hole in Santa Rosa is a popular diving destination. The Blue Hole provided water to cattle and travelers going across the desert. But even prior to that, native populations have used the hole for centuries, maybe even millennia, as a limitless source of water and a spot to cool down. At first glance, the Blue Hole seems harmless, just a deep, blue swimming hole off Route 66. But this is no ordinary pond. It's a natural artesian well, pumping out 3,000 gallons of water per minute. And the water in the hole itself completely refreshes every 6 hours or so that should give you an indication of how big it is. Its depths plunging 80 feet down before widening into a vast, hidden cavern. It's a dream spot, constant 62 degrees Fahrenheit or 17 degrees Celsius water, 80 feet deep, with visibility so clear it feels like flying underwater. Then, at the midway point, it begins to widen again, and eventually, the hole widens to almost 130 feet, 39.6 meters across, at the bottom of its 80-foot depth. Directly beneath the main pool, there's a narrow tunnel. There are some boulders and some rubble, typical things you'd expect. There are also bones, a crucifix, and a little opening on the east side. This opening is covered by a metal grate, which is the entrance to a massive underwater cavern. There are massive rooms and corridors, and other times, just the tiniest of squeezes. You can't really tell from the outside what a cave is going to look like until you enter. Most people have absolutely no interest in finding out what a cave looks like inside, but not everyone though. And unfortunately, the grate blocking the entrance wasn't always there. Every year, thousands of students come from across the country to scuba dive the Blue Hole of Santa Rosa. The water is clear, the temperature is stable, and there are no currents in it that divers need to worry about. It's like a big swimming pool with perfect conditions to learn in, which is part of the reason why it's so popular. It was March 10th, 1976. A group of 10 students from Oklahoma were part of a university dive club. They planned to do some underwater photography as part of one of their classes. They were young, passionate, and looking for adventure. Among them were 22-year-old David Gregg and 21-year-old Michael Goddard. Both were certified, both experienced. But what they were about to attempt had never been done successfully before. At around 10:30 a.m., everyone had their scuba gear on, and two students, Mike and David, slipped into the water with everyone else. Before beginning the dive, all the students were told not to stay at the bottom for too long and warned that under no circumstances should they enter the cave on the eastern side of the hole. They descended into the Blue Hole and found the entrance to the cave. The team took turns diving into the cave system. But this was no ordinary cavern. Soon enough, David and Mike made their way to the bottom to look around. and before they knew it, they were floating in front of the little 4-foot opening. From the entrance, the cave descends straight down about 15 feet, and right away the environment is very different. The passages were pitch black, tight and unstable, and the water is not crystal clear like above. Still, they kept going, and at the bottom of the 15-foot, 4.6-meter drop is a large corridor splitting off forward and backward at a 60-degree angle. Now, although the tunnels are decently sized, without proper training, divers can accidentally disturb the water too much with how they're swimming. Visibility dropped to 0. Silt filled the water with every kick. The deeper they went, the more disoriented they became. It's also easy to not realize that you're doing this because you're looking in front of you while you're exploring. Without any knowledge, they were literally sealing their own fate. Finally, when they turned around, they had no clue where the way back was. From their vantage point, it was just a big cloud of dust in front of them. Entering a cloud like that, you lose all sense of direction and have no clue which way is up and which way is down. This is where panic usually sets in. You start to get that pit in your stomach as you move blindly through the silt, knowing you made a huge mistake and that you only have so much air left. Before you know it, you're breathing so hard, you're hyperventilating, and you're moving around way faster than you should be in a panic. This then only magnifies the visibility problem, and you're banging into walls and ceilings, and then all of a sudden, you take a breath and it feels like you're breathing through a straw because you've run out of air in your tanks. The remaining students and instructor realized that something happened to David and Mike. When the group realized the 2 divers were missing, they informed authorities. Rescue teams arrived quickly. But this is no rescue dive. This is a recovery dive. Rescue divers descended and ran a 100-foot, 30.5-meter line to search for them. This allowed them to find their way back, even if the way was silted out. Team dive into the dark, tight passage. Visibility was near 0. He used a guide rope to feel his way through the cave. Eventually, he found one of the bodies, David. He was near the entrance to one of the many rooms the cave has that branch off from the main hallway. He was floating motionless, regulator out of his mouth, surrounded by disturbed silt. Melton marked the spot and returned to the surface. It took so long to find Michael. Many of them wouldn't even enter because of how bad the conditions were. The depth was one issue, but beyond just the depth, the cave is small enough that it really only made sense to send one person in at a time. Over the next several days, the team would get as far as 181 feet, 55.2 meters deep, so over twice the depth of where the cave begins. One rescue diver eventually got down to the end of a large hallway. Then, he shined a powerful flashlight to illuminate the room, but because of how large the chamber was, he couldn't even see the bottom. Finally, 4 days later, on the 14th, the search was called off when the water became too cloudy due to changes in the pressure on the surface. Afterward, a 300-pound, 136.1 kilogram metal grate was lowered over the entrance to prevent anyone else from going inside. Over a month later, when the grate was temporarily removed and David's body was finally located. Incredibly, it was at only 130 feet, 39.6 meters of depth, which is really not all that deep compared to how far the rescue had gone. Finally, after that, the grate was reinstalled where it remained for almost 40 years. The incident shook the diving community. How could this happen to trained divers? The answer lay in the cave itself. The Santa Rosa Blue Hole cave system is not only deep, it's unstable. One wrong move can cloud the water entirely, making it impossible to navigate. It's a trap that even skilled divers can't escape if they're not prepared. 37 years later, a diving organization known as the ADM Exploration Foundation contacted the city of Santa Rosa with the hope of being given permission to map and explore the cave, which had been sealed for all those years. After extensive planning and permits, the Advanced Diver magazine, ADM Exploration Team, was finally given access to the sealed cave. Their first job: remove the massive grate that had kept divers out since the 70s. But what lay beneath wasn't what anyone expected. The entrance was completely choked with debris, rocks, silt, and one enormous boulder blocking the way forward. It took 3 years just to clear it. In 2016, the path was finally open. Leading the mission was legendary cave diver Mike Young, accompanied by Navy diver Shane Thompson. Over several days, they mapped the cave, running fixed lines to ensure a way out. By March 26th, they had reached 195 feet, about as far as they could go. But the cave didn't end there. The deepest point was blocked by boulders the size of cars. Still, Mike planned one last dive to check for missed passages and retrieve the guideline. Past 140 feet, the tunnels were treacherous. Massive boulders filled the space, leaving barely enough room to turn around. In some areas, divers had only a few feet between the floor and ceiling. When they reached a tight restriction, Mike signaled Shane to stop. Mike was more experienced, and the passage ahead was so narrow, it only made sense for one diver to continue. Mike slipped through a crack in the rocks, pulling himself with his arms. He reached the end of the line, ready to remove it, but paused. He thought, this should be on video. Shane had the camera, so Mike turned back to retrieve it. But when he turned around, everything had changed. The space was completely silted out. Zero visibility. No surprise, it's impossible to avoid stirring up the bottom in such tight quarters. He followed the line back. Then he ran straight into Shane. Shane had ignored their plan and followed Mike through the restriction. Now, he was stuck and starting to panic. Mike was shocked. The route he had just passed through wasn't easy, and now Shane couldn't turn around. So, Mike backed out, reached in, and pulled as hard as he could. It felt like he might break Shane's legs, but he got him free. Still blinded by silt, Mike felt the line in his hand moving. Shane was following. Then suddenly, snap, the line ripped out of Mike's grip. No line, no visibility, just cold, tight darkness. His breathing started to pick up, but Mike had trained for this. He reminded himself, I've got time, I've got air. He calmed his breathing, then started feeling around. Eventually his hand touched something, a small opening. He crawled through, then another. Then finally he accidentally found the line. Mike followed the line deeper again, and out of nowhere, he felt Shane's arm. Shane was thrashing, panicking. Mike grabbed his arm to reassure him, then found a larger opening nearby and pulled him toward it. But as Shane pushed through, still in a panic, he scrambled too fast, wedging himself under Mike. Now, their bodies were twisted in the narrow tunnel, head to feet, completely stuck. Shane was kicking violently, even breaking a valve on Mike's suit, flooding it with freezing water. Mike shielded his face and finally wedged a leg into a crack, creating just enough space for Shane to wriggle free. In the chaos, Shane kicked off one of Mike's fins and shoved him through the next opening. Mike paused to collect himself again. He was exhausted, soaked with cold water, and still trapped deep inside a deadly cave. But then, something incredible, he found his missing fin lying on a rock. It was a small thing, but it gave him hope. He kept moving, hole to hole, boulder to boulder. Then finally visibility. He saw the line. He grabbed it, and it was moving. Shane was still alive. Mike swam toward him, but then the line went limp. He knew instantly Shane was gone. He reached Shane's body and began removing gear for recovery, but then came another harsh reality. His suit was still leaking cold water, and he had hours of decompression ahead. He had to leave. So, he followed the line back out, inch by inch. Eventually, he surfaced, met the safety divers, and gave them the devastating news. Then he began the 2-hour decompression, alone with his thoughts, grief, and bitter cold. Back on the surface, Mike wanted to go back for Shane that night, but the team stopped him. He returned the next day and brought Shane home. The footage from Shane's helmet cam showed the truth. Right after Mike disappeared, Shane had followed, despite the plan. His breathing was heavy, erratic. He overloaded his rebreather, switched to backup gas, then burned through that too, never switching back. His suit was torn to shreds from panic swimming through the rocks. The cave was mapped, but not the way they had hoped. Originally, the team had dreamed of opening it up to other cave divers, but Mike later said it was one of the sketchiest caves he'd ever seen. One restriction was just a small crawl space beneath a multi-ton boulder balanced on a fragile lip of rock. They knew then, no one else should ever enter this cave. A new grate was installed, the entrance sealed forever. The Santa Rosa Blue Hole remains a beautiful, safe place to swim and dive. But beneath the surface lies a cave that has claimed 3 lives and nearly taken more. Some mysteries, it seems, are better left untouched. It's a stunning place, but beneath the beauty lies danger. The Santa Rosa Blue Hole reminds us some adventures are better left unexplored. If you made this far, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more deep dive documentaries into the world's most mysterious and dangerous places. And let us know in the comments if you need any story like this to cover. We are happy to do the research and unlocking those stories for you. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.